Good morning, everybody. It's October 10th, 2024, regular board meeting agenda, Magna Water District, 8885 West, 3500 South, the general office building. I'd like to call this meeting to order. So today on our diocese table, we have Trevor Andre, Dallas Henline, Raymond Mondragon, Andrew Sumption, Jeff White, Mick Sudbury, Danny Stewart, Leal Fitzgerald, Nathan Bracken, and helping us today with our meeting is Clint Dilly. Will everybody please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I would like to welcome the public and guests. Does anybody here today have a public comment they would like to address the board? Okay, I see none. So does anybody here have a conflict of interest with anything on our agenda? Okay, moving on. Let's move on to approval of common consent items.
Okay, minutes of the regular board meeting held September 12, 2024. Expenses for September 2nd to September 29, 2024. General expenses, $1,529,933.92. Zions Bank bond payment, $83,492.50.
I'll second it.
It's been motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving on our department reports, our general manager report.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'll highlight a couple things on staffing. On our water operations side, we've selected and offered the position for the interim assistant water operations manager. We're just waiting on final details and negotiations on that to confirm that. Once that's done, we'll move forward with the district inspector position that we will be posting, assuming that goes forward.
So I got a question. So when we fill a position and then we have to put it up for bid, right?
Yeah.
How long is the bid system? Is it 7 days?
5
Oh, 5?
I run it for 7
calendar
days.
days.
7 days? Okay,
It's a week, basically, of,
a week.
gotta make sure you give a full week of full days.
Okay, awesome. That's good to know that.
Good. And then we do have a service maintenance, customer service position on the meter crew, which has been posted. So we should know if there's any in-house interest in that by
Next Wednesday.
next Wednesday. On operations side, want to highlight that we'll be noticing the public today that the secondary water system will be shut down on the 15th of October with the canal. Canal will be ending their season. This will be a unique year for us with the reuse water to the point we're really close. We've already put some water into the system that's been filtered and pumped, but we're limited on how much we can put in until they finish up some of the chlorine and the testing sampling equipment, right? But it sounds like that's really close and potentially next week.
So they haven't started the pumps yet.
We've just been testing the pumps mechanically.
Okay.
But we're
Pumping them.
So we probably are not going to, are we gonna wait till spring to fire everything up and get running?
pushing really hard to do some next week.
Okay, because I have some people from Jordan Valley would love to come out and see it, and I think, like I said, next spring, if we could do an open house, because I think we have a lot of people that's really interested that would like to see it, and I think it'd be something really neat to brag about.
Yeah, I think that would be a good time frame to make sure we've ironed out, probably later spring.
Right.
Ironed out all the kinks and we're up and running and we've met all of the obligations that we have, regulatory.
Are we gonna fill any reservoirs during the winter?
I think there's potential that we're gonna take an aggressive cleaning. So we're really looking at how
This
can
one up
we-
here?
Yeah, we'll try to lower as much as we can this year, more than we usually have. Because that way, when we start testing the reuse, we can actually pump into the reservoir.
And then look at dredging.
Dredging, yes, good looking into
Both of
it.
them, or just one?
Just the one for now,
The upper one?
no, the lower one here.
What-
What
is
was
it
it
the
been
upper
getting
one?
the smell from?
Oh, I thought it was the upper one, they get the smell, it's the lower one?
Yeah, it's the lower one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we'll look at that this year and then be in position to do some additional noticing and let people know that that change is made and that's what they should expect. So we're
How mu-
hoping
Hey,
with that
Clint,
effort, it'll be.
How much chlorine is gonna be in the reuse water?
Just the minimal effective dose, what was that?
The regulatory is a minimum of 1 milligram per liter as it leaves the pumping system. So, I mean, is anybody gonna notice that in
I think it'll,
gardening or anything like that?
I think they will notice a change. It
I mean, from
depends.
ditch water, are you telling me they're gonna see a change from ditch water? No, I meant,
No,
sometimes you
I
smell
meant-
chlorine in the drinking water.
I don't think you're gonna have that level to where people will be able to smell it.
Okay.
Unless they're really sensitive. There are some very sensitive sniffers. And they find the chlorine very offensive.
I've only heard about it when we've shut systems down and turned systems on. They'll get just a little bit, but not continuing.
Yeah, I think it will, with the nature of the system, I think most of it'll be used up, pretty quickly. I don't know that you're gonna get much of a residual out in the system once it's delivered.
Well, based on what he told me, I believe we're mandatory to do it, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
It is what it is.
I think it'll be helpful to have chlorine added. It wouldn't definitely be much less than your drinking water, which, you know, we try to maintain a residual, and we're usually the lowest about 0.4.
Okay.
The highest, we're usually at 0.9.
Yeah.
Right? So people, that's the range that some people can detect that, and some people can't in that range with the smell and the taste. On the high end, I think most people can start to do it. On the low end, I think there's very few that can pick up 0.4.
Well, I told them it won't affect their lawn because they use drinking water to do their lawn and it doesn't see any.
It won't be any more than their drinking water, that's
Yeah, okay.
So getting back to this reservoir out here, was we thinking about putting maybe a fountain of youth so the water comes out and sprays up in the air to keep the water agitated? Or do you think we won't have that problem of the people smelling it?
No, I think once the reuse, probably the first year is gonna probably take a minute to, once we get it all kind of cleaned out and the lines all flushed. I think that's the main thing, is just getting the lines flushed, and then I think the water quality should change quite a bit.
Okay,
It's never been dredged. How old is that reservoir?
Couldn't even tell.
2004.
But this
20
reuse water
Getting
should,
20 years old.
there won't be.
20 years old, so any organic or anything's been in there, we dredge that out. It should be in pretty good
It should
shape.
improve
should be really good.
dramatically. And I think the big takeaway is we're gonna install, we've got a couple projects identified to install some additional drains to make sure we get real good flushing.
Oh, good.
That'll be.
and how, in the wintertime, how thick does that pond get?
On ice,
Yeah,
never checked.
so so the city can't use it for an ice skate
Oh,
rink?
shoot.
I got asked that, by the way, so that's why I brought it up.
No.
We couldn't afford the liability.
Okay, if there's nothing else on that, I'll just jump to wastewater.
Okay,
I want to highlight that they got their plant drain well pump replacement, the piping and the valving, been completed. The bypass pumping, obviously, for the reuse project. That was pretty complicated. They got that completed. And then we're to the point, like we discussed, with the reuse being pretty close to being ready to go full into the system. For the office, we've completed the concrete repairs to replace the curbing and fix that settling and prevent future water from coming into the building during an extreme rain event. We think we've fixed those issues as far as the ground level. And they've also made quite a bit of progress on repairing some of the soffit.
Office, chimney
fascia.
cap.
The only thing we have left is to finish some checking of the
Windows.
Window sills.
seals and caulking. So we're not gonna get a Hurricane Milton,
Yeah, oh, wow.
but that felt like it to our little area. With as much water that came against the building, it was probably, I mean, I know it was more than I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Did that little retention out back fill up with the water? You know, the one that,
It put a
Had
couple
something
feet in
that
it.
didn't-
Yeah.
Well,
I also wanted to highlight, Leisle completed as one of her goals, a procurement flow chart, specific to the district will be able to be handed out to all of our managers and leads that will help guide them to make sure that they're following all of the procurement process and getting the number of bids, what spending level triggers different responses. And then what it really helps us do is make sure we have, they're following that process. It's just having all the paperwork documentation. And then Leisle found an inconsistency in the AR&R language on one of the dollar amounts. So we'll have that corrected in the AR&Rs and bring it back to the board for approval.
does it make it nice they all to be able to do your real job now?
Yeah, we're so happy to have her be able to
To do her,
Do
do
different
all of her
things.
focus on our expertise.
expertise, yeah. And really dive into solve some of these challenges, you know, that
Yeah,
we've
that's
had.
nice.
So, I just wanted to highlight that to the board. That's really neat. And last, I'll just talk about the communication. Trevor and I met with Magna City and MSD representatives for our first monthly coordination meeting. We thought that was positive and will hopefully improve coordination on development projects and construction projects.
You really think it'll eliminate our surprise?
Hopefully, that's the goal, is eliminate surprises on both ends.
You think the problem was maybe they were shuffling people around or something with the MSD or?
There's a long list of potential reasons, but there's a lot of bureaucracy, you know, between the MSD, Salt Lake County Engineering, flood control, the city, us, you know, there have been some challenges, but I think this was
Yeah, it was positive.
good, positive attempt to solve.
well, like I
that.
said, just remember you guys stand your ground because they're not gonna, you know, they're not gonna tell us what to do.
Yeah. I don't get the feeling that,
Okay, but you know what I'm talking
But
about,
we
right, in
will,
the previous.
I wanted to get the board's input. I was invited by a member of this Lake Leaders Initiative. They've got a launch event on November 14th. The person that's involved is from Magna that invited me. I can't remember her name, but it's discussing, it's basically gonna be, one part of it will be public facing and they'll talk as a panel. And then there'll be like a private meeting after with the water agencies to give input on, you know, just all the solutions that they're looking at to try to keep the Great Salt Lake healthy. Wanted to know if the board supported attendance of that. I think it'd probably be good for us to understand, especially as close as we are.
Isn't that kind of like global warming? because the lake just has a natural effect up and down.
Well, I think what the feeling is that a more coordinated effort can help provide some resilience to the lake. I don't know that you can have dramatic changes on the overall lake level. I mean, a lot of that is driven by climate, right? But an example of what they think they can do is timing of when water gets to the lake. Jordan Valley just talked about a release that they did in the fall when water's usually scarce. They released a bunch of water from Utah Lake to get to Great Salt Lake along with the church and the canal company. And so projects like that, I think, is what they're looking at. How can we get more water to the lake when it's lower? Because that helps keep the health of the lake intact. I think we have some opportunities to participate with our canal shares. So that's where, if we were to lease our canal shares, I don't know that we would give it away unless the board.
Kind of like what
doesn't
they've done at Jordan Valley with leasing some of their canal
Well,
shares.
same with Kennecott, so.
Right.
It's a good idea to lease them.
But at
'cause then
least
they get
we would know
utilized.
what they're looking at and what they're gonna be asking, so.
I'm just afraid you might get some negative effects from now our reuse system, which is gonna be a big benefit to us.
Yeah.
I think the lake people might use that as a
Negative against us.
Yeah,
which-
we should be understanding what
I know
I
our
think they're
previous,
thinking.
our previous Jordan Valley water manager wasn't really intrigued about us doing the reuse.
We got the water rights to it, and,
Right.
you know?
But I think I could report back on what they're thinking and talking about.
I think your counter effect would be leasing out our canal shares would be a real good opportunity.
Yeah.
I do too. I think it's a good thing.
Good, okay. If the board's supportive, I can go and attend and then report back. The other thing I wanted to highlight that's not on here, I was approached by a Bishop Consulting Firm. They're a lobbyist group that's out of DC. It consists of the former rep, Rob Bishop. They were looking to gauge interest in representing us on a national lobby effort back in DC. Wanted to gauge the interest level of the board to be able to respond to them.
We have a little bit of a riff with lobbyists.
Yeah,
We've
and we
had a
could
bad
talk about
experience
that.
with
I don't know if that's a potential closed, if there's any closed part of this discussion, but just if there's
Is there
just a
anything
general
out- is there-
feeling, I just wanted to get the.
Right, is
feel
there
for the
anything
board.
out there that we need from the federal government for, like, you know, to,
I mean, you guys have done a great job to get that between you and Trevor and your group to get that information
the
in.
money we've saved?
Oh, I think it's been way better than any lobbyist ever did for us.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
my own opinion.
We have gotten more money without one in the past few years than we did before, but that could have been because we didn't, I know there was just a general time period where there wasn't much available directly through appropriations at the federal level.
Is there a lot now
I
out
think
there?
there is more now than there was in the past. So we could continue that dialogue and see what they could get for us if they thought there was money available, or I can just say, hey, we're not interested at this time.
Well, the thing is I don't know, be a retainer, and we'd have to give them so much money. But what we have gave never worked out.
Never. We never recouped.
We
what
never
put out.
recouped everything that
Yes,
we,
it's
Yeah, so the challenge with DC lobbyists is usually they're retained. I don't know if you've discussed retainers with them,
No, I
but
haven't discussed any.
you have to pay a monthly retainer
Right.
for them to work for you, and that's regardless of what they get. And so it's not on a per hour basis. And so my advice to clients is if you have a lot going on in DC,
right.
then it makes sense to have representation. And I have a few clients that do, but if you don't have a lot going on in DC, if you don't need a lot, I mean, you were talking about getting federal funds, but a lot of times, like for instance, I think Jordan Valley and some of the large districts do
retain a.
Yeah, they have some representation back in DC, but a lot of that, like for instance, the Central Utah project, that's a federal program. It's being run by federal regulations, and so they want somebody back there monitoring what the federal government's going to do with the regulations and statutes that impact that program. And so those are usually the types of districts, or like Washington County Water Conservancy districts, building the Lake Powell pipeline and those types of things, where there's a large federal component. So, I mean, that's just something to keep in mind. During my tenure with you, we haven't hardly done anything with the federal government.
Right.
So, I mean, I guess it just depends on the price that they would charge.
So, Al, can you remember right offhand, was his name Robert,
I tried to forget.
I
the
think the
name.
first name's right, Robert, can't remember his name.
The biggest tie for the district is the Department of Defense
right,
out here.
can you remember what?
We did our annual retainer.
Was it 60,000 a year?
Oh, yeah, it was a lot. We paid him over
That's
400,000,
ridiculous.
How much, would you say?
over 400.
And we never got nothing, right?
No, not that I know.
Back in, I can't remember if he was the lobbyist when we got the federal money for the water treatment plant, but that's, if he was, that was the only federal money we got.
Because we
And
do,
it was like 5 million.
yeah, Orrin Hatch was a big push behind that, right, back in the day? Bob Wagner.
That's it, Wagner.
That's it, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
it.
but it seems like now that you guys, your team, can find these things and apply for them, and we don't need a lobbyist in there, but we're such a small outfit compared to Jordan Valley Water, we don't do any federal
And we could,
types.
always say if we have a project, I mean, I could approach them about, hey, would you work on a per project basis? If we had a specific project where it could help to get some support, and, we could see if
I
they
don't think
work
they'll
like
do
that,
that.
but I don't think they will.
Yeah, so I used to work a lot in DC in my past job, and so I know a lot of these lobbyists, and so Bishop obviously was very powerful, very well connected, but to me, if it's gonna be on a case-by-case basis, that you pick the best lobbyist for that project, and that may, I know a whole bunch of people back there, and that Rob would be great, but there may be other people, depending on the project, that have better connections, and for instance, if you have a Democratic administration, do you want, a very well-known Republican lobbyist?
The only problem I seen is when we applied for things like that, we spent the money and everything, we were in line with a bunch of other people that had a lot,
Yeah.
could justify that probably more than we could, and that was the problem, you were competing with the other ones all trying to grab at it.
Yeah.
So, that's the only thing.
Yeah, that could push it over to where we get funding.
Yeah, we don't get a
So
chance.
I can keep the conversation open, I can shut it down, wanted to gauge the,
Well, I don't think we ever want to shut it down. I mean, we want to.
for right now.
Well,
I could
yeah,
say,
I
hey,
guess,
we're not interested.
right, yeah, like I said, but, down the road, you never,
Yeah.
and I don't know if, if really, and Nathan can answer this one, is like, how effective are they, it just depends on what we're looking for, right?
Yeah, I think it just really depends on what you need. It sounds like what they're asking for is just, hey, we just represent you generally, and I don't know if you have enough work there. But, the other thing is you'd have to go through a procurement process anyway. And so I would be a little wary of, especially if it's gonna be $400,000. I don't know if that's the case here, but you would need to go through a competitive process. And
Yeah.
I mean, I know state lobbyists with some of my other clients are close to $100,000 a year. Federal lobbyists are gonna be more. So you'd need to go through a competitive process anyway. And so you couldn't, that may be the response is, we haven't made a decision on this, but when we do, we're gonna have to go through a competitive process. And if we do that, we'd be happy to let you know so you can apply.
Well, and I looked at all the work that we had to do besides the lobbyists. You guys had to do a lot of footwork.
Oh, yeah.
And I think you're doing the same amount of footwork for our own grants and stuff, and I think you
We're not
guys have
paying
been very
nothing, right?
successful.
Yeah, and that's something I've learned in working with lobbyists is one of the, and I'm not saying this about this particular firm, but one of the mistakes I've seen a lot of the water entities make when they've retained lobbyists is that they say, well, this person's from Utah and they know Utah issues, as opposed to just getting the best lobbyist regardless of where they're from. And so that to me would be my advice is, sometimes it makes sense to have someone that's Utah specific, but if the issue you need isn't a Utah specific issue, if it's just, say, new perchlorate regulations that EPA is pushing out, you want to get somebody who knows the perchlorate stuff.
Well, and the guy that we had retained, he actually worked for Orrin Hatch for years and years, but he was from Utah.
See, and I don't think that matters most of the
No, I
time.
agree. But I think we went back there, a few of us trustees, I don't know, about 3 or 4 times, and,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Dog and pony show,
Yeah,
Right.
you guys did a lot of the footwork yourselves.
Right.
no results.
Well, I can then,
Whatever you think's best to do, and like I said, you can talk with Nathan, you guys can kind of figure, see what you
Weigh it
think.
out.
Weigh it out and say yay, nay,
sounds good.
whatever we need to do.
Well, at this point in time, I don't see a real big need,
Okay,
but I'll keep the board posted if
Okay.
something changes.
If
That's
we
my
have-
report.
So we have something coming up on your future planning you've been doing? Because you're looking out there, what, 8 years?
Yeah, I mean, there's,
So I think that is really beneficial for you guys looking at forecast. And then you can apply that to if we need help.
good.
Okay, Trevor, we're gonna turn it over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Board and Chair. Engineering report, so some significant things, the water line projects, the 8850 West and 9000, those are done. They were working on the punch list last week, and that is essentially wrapped up, so that project is complete. They did a great job. We're happy with how that turned out.
And no complaints really, huh? I mean, it was just,
You know, we had a few little ones,
But
but
nothing-
nothing major. Nope. Some kind of strange ones.
we didn't have any homeless sleeping in the backhoes and that, so we're done good.
No, they did well. Reuse project, we've talked a little bit about that, so you're kind of up to date on that. Pretty much everything interior is completed. There'll be some touch-up painting, painting of the
Nice.
pipes. Yeah, it's looking really good. Functionality is getting there. Influent pump station, they've started to grub a little bit of the site for the grit washing facility, but nothing major there. Let's see. Haynes 8 replacement, still ongoing, waiting on the federal, EPA to review our work documents before we can bid that, but it's progressing. West Side Collection Project is out to bid right now. We've got a bunch of questions from bidders. Got good expectations that we'll get, a few bids in on that one, make that a competitive bid process. That ends on the 24th. Change House, we've been communicating with Bowen and Collins on that. We anticipate having a meeting this month where we can then bring something to the board to look at and discuss in November. And then the reservoirs, Zone 3 secondary reservoir, I've got pretty much a final agreement with Northrop Grumman, which we should be able to sign and kind of move forward on that project as well. So, any other questions on things that you see on there, or maybe yet for me?
I think it looks good. Danny, you have anything?
No, it's good.
You okay, Jeff?
Oh, I thought it looked good.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on. Let's, hold on just a second, I've screwed up. Okay, Raymond, we're gonna move this report over to you.
Okay, water operations report. Meter crew's been working on replacing secondary meters the last month, trying to get through this grant on these meters. And EDR, we're expecting our stacks to show up next Tuesday, so next Tuesday, probably the following week, we'll start installing the new stacks at the EDR plant. Nolan Construction should be starting 4184 Tuesday. See if we can locate that valve. where am I at? And we're getting our letters out today for lead and copper, so that'll be part of the letters 70 letters that we're.
So it was overall, the lead and copper was pretty good. I mean,
Yeah.
okay, it wasn't what we were thinking. I mean, was it?
So I'll show you, as part of that, we've created a GIS database that will be public facing. And they'll see, you know, this splash screen that gives them a little information. Then once they enter in there, they'll be able to, they can look up their address or their parcel number.
Okay,
What's your address, Mick?
8042 West Coon Canyon Way.
42 West.
Is it all right if we?
I don't
pull
care.
it up?
You're gonna scare me now.
Coon Canyon. It should take us into there. That look familiar?
Yeah, there it is. There's.
Blue's good, blue's good.
Yep,
That's
so if you look, the little, each home has a little circle. It's got a left side, right side, which means like customer side, utility side. And then this legend over here would show them what that means. So the blue means non-lead.
Okay.
If they click on their particular circle, gives them a little more information. Customer material source, installation date was after the lead ban, so your home is new enough that that wasn't an issue.
So find a red, let's see what that looks like.
So Jack, can we pull up your address, see how it,
Sure. 3330 South, 8,000 west.
3330 south.
It's all
hey, what the heck, huh?
I'll be, lead pipe.
We'll give the big reveal, there's no red on here
No red?
that we found.
Good, that's excellent.
No red.
Does that look familiar? So blue there as well.
We're in good shape.
Yep. So if I'll zoom out and give you you know, like Clint said, we don't have a lot of variation out here. We literally have blue and we have yellow. You know, and if I zoom in here, you'll see this one, we've identified that there's galvanized requiring replacement on the customer side,
Yeah.
where the utility side is copper. And so that'll be information that, so like in this one, they'll get a letter that will, like Raymond said, that we're mailing out, that will tell them that, hey, we've identified galvanized on your
So does
service line.
galvanized attract any lead?
So what it can do is if there's lead upstream, and that means kind of anywhere in the system where it may have transported water and then through that galvanized line, it can deposit on the walls of the galvanized. But, you know, saying that, we don't have indications of that then leaching back into the water, into the home, because through our lead testing program, we've always had good numbers. But that still is a concern, and these galvanized lines will then be, you know, they're required to be replaced. The one up above here that's yellow, that means there's galvanized on both sides, utility side and customer
I'm
side.
surprised galvanized is still lasting this long.
Yeah, there's some
They would be old,
galvanized
that would be
lines.
clear back in the 60s.
Oh, there's some 30 years old or more.
And you'll see the majority of the colors happens over here. And
Is that on the west side?
Yeah.
Okay.
So in what you tested, Trevor, what would you say percentage is galvanized in what you've tested?
so
10%?
based on our inventory, I mean, we have 70 lines that have galvanized in them out of our,
Was it
All
like
our-
1,400? 18?
customers, yeah, so,
On the
The
customer
ones that
side?
were older than such and such date?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know what that
1979.
percentage was.
You're well below 1%.
What, well, yeah, low percentage. Now, just to caveat all of this, we'll continue to do inventory. You know, we haven't absolutely seen every single line.
Yeah.
This was a, you know, percentage in an
And that
initial
wouldn't be a
inventory.
service line, would it? That would be in the house?
No, these are outside service.
Oh,
Service lines from the meter into the house and the meter to the main.
I can't believe they're lasting.
I remember my old house had one that had have the galvanized.
And we'll have to complete this, inventory by 2027 for the whole district.
So this will be forward-facing, those galvanized lines, they'll get letters. This will be just a link on our webpage that any customer can access. and
So is there any kind of, for these people that have these problems, is there any kind of grant money out there that there is? Isn't
There is
there?
service line replacement money.
Okay,
through-
so we need to probably educate these people that,
We're gonna have to replace them,
right,
but anything inside the house,
right.
Right.
they would have to.
Yeah.
But there's some kind of,
There is funding available, grant funding, which
so
we're
can
applying
we,
for.
can we need to educate these people
Yeah.
to tell
So
them
the
how to.
initial letter will tell them, hey, we've identified galvanized. We're gonna send out additional information on the replacement. We have another letter that we're drafting, that will then follow about that replacement.
Yeah, the bad thing about, once you put the new line in, then their water heater's gonna blow up because they're gonna have so much water coming into them.
Probably.
I think it's actually cheaper now with the materials available to replace that line than what it would have been then, because galvanized, pretty tough to replace, but.
I remember my old house, you'd look down that pipe, you wouldn't even know how the water even flew through it with all the buildup, corrosion.
There was actually 4,400.
4,400, okay. So, yeah, low
Yeah,
percentage.
a lot less, I mean, a lot less percentage of lead or galvanized than,
What we thought.
yeah, 4,000 versus 70, yeah.
Good.
All right, I'll finish my report. The colony water production of the month of September was 194 million gallons, or 595.41 acre feet, 8.7% increase from 2023. Year-to-date was 1,422.69 million gallons, or 4,366.40 acre feet, a 7.69% increase from 2023. We have purchased 597.47 acre feet from Jordan Valley as year-to-date. Secondary water production in the month of September was 60.59 million gallons, or 185.97 acre feet, an 8.56 increase from 2023. Year-to-date was 398.39 million gallons, or 1,222.72 acre feet, a 31.23 increase from 2023. Your call-out report, wastewater and water combined, total number of call-outs 19, water being 18, wastewater being 1, total hours paid out was 78. Water was 75, wastewater was 3. Mainline breaks 2, service line leaks 4, miscellaneous 13. That concludes my water production report.
Thank you. So I got a question. So, of course, winter's coming on, so we're gonna have to start gearing up, right? Making sure we're all ready to go with because that's when we get a lot of leaks in the winter, right?
Yeah, those
A
are.
lot of main breaks, so gotta make sure we got everything we need,
Yes.
all our pipe, so, okay. Okay, Dallas, we're gonna turn it over to the wastewater.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman and Board. I'd start with the wastewater treatment. The operators have been working with the mechanics to go over some of our quarterly preventative maintenance. They've worked on changing all the fluids and oils in the clarifier drive motors. They've been cleaning all the air filters in the HVAC system, all of our VFDs, and all of our other mechanical equipment. And then, right now, as far as the reuse goes, the manufacturer that supplied the cloth disc filters, they're on site, and the boys are gonna be doing some training with them. And then we'll build a training packet, and we'll record some videos, and we'll put that in the wastewater training program, so we can refer back to that. And then, next week, they'll come on site and they'll commission the Hawk analyzers, the rest of the chlorine equipment, and then the sampler, so that we can continue to move forward there. Just a couple things of note on the collection system side. The counties in the district, milling and paving, they're on 9150, and they're doing some of those side streets below 2820 over to 9200. So you'll see our crews on site working with them to raise our
manhole lids and water valves, up to the elevations of the new grade. And then we're working with Geneva Pipe. There's a manhole in the old junkyard area, north of 2700, just west of 5600, where we've got a liner that we're gonna put in to try to rehab one of those old degraded manholes. So that's pretty much what the wastewater collection crews and treatment crews are up to. Unless there's any questions, that's all I have.
What's the reason you work with Geneva Pipe versus Oldcastle?
Geneva Pipe has a specific product that you drop in as a liner, and it's not concrete, so it's not a prefabbed, typical concrete manhole that you would see. It's some type of, I don't know.
Epoxy material or something?
Yeah, but it's a full drop-in unit, so it replaces the entire cone, and then they fasten it in there. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, the process is they take a 3D scan of the existing manhole, and then they build a trough that drops straight down in there, and then they use a PVC pipe essentially to then become the manhole sections all the way up to the flat top lid with a concrete, lid and ring. And so,
I have a question. So you're talking about draining oils. Are you taking the time to pull samples and send them in?
Right now, we're not. We've discussed that with the mechanic. The pricing on that was a little higher than what we thought was value.
Qualify?
I think it was like $750 per sample.
What?
I'm off to double check that.
Oil samples $25.
Well, we'll have
I
to,
don't know what you're checking, but anytime you pull a lube oil out of a unit, we should be taking the time to document that and send it over. You can send it to Wheeler, it's like $25.
That's where you've been sending them, actually. Well, That's where Bob has been sending the ones for the compressors and the motors is, and it is
I mean, you're taking an opportunity to check something that may show up something very distinct, but it might be minute, but later, I mean, since you're taking the time to do it, it's good to document that and file it.
Sure.
Just to have a track record. You never miss an opportunity to record that kind of
Sure.
information.
We'll revisit that, and I'll make sure I've got a good understanding
But
of it.
where you're taking $750, because that's ridiculous. There isn't anybody that spend that kind of money.
I wouldn't,
The
so.
people that usually, what we found is we were doing it independently, but we found that some people that are supplying your oils will pay for the analysis,
Sure.
for a lube oil analysis.
I know he has sampled quite a bit. I think there's times where what he sees trips a sample, but I'm not sure that he's doing it every time.
And that's the problem. You can't always see small particles of metal and things like that.
Sure.
There's no way you can see that kind of stuff. So if you're relying on visual, you're missing the boat 100%.
Okay. Well, I
So,
appreciate that.
and we as the board has been very stern about that we do with these samples. So if we're not been doing them, we better get back on doing them. Okay, Leal, we're gonna move on to the controller's report.
Thank you, Mr. Board. Mr. Board, I hope I do that all the time. Mr. Chair and Board. As far as compliance for our legal requirements, we are in compliance. I have a few highlighted. The adoption of the district's annual tentative budget, that will be today, adopting a tentative budget. And then the next one is the annual certification and filing of our budget. That's due 30 days after we have the final budget hearing, which won't be until November. The next one is the quarterly budget to actual reports that I provide to the Board of Trustees. For third quarter, I'll report next month, next board meeting. And then the same type of information is to be posted to the transparency website. Third quarter will be posted by the end of this month. The next requirement down is disclosure regarding responsibility of homeowner to repair retail water lines. So we educate the public. Every new account that comes in, we educate them on what is their responsibility and what's Magna Water's. We're required semi-annually to post it on our bills, so it reminds people what they're responsible for. So we've done it once this year. We need to do it again. I believe we're scheduled to do that for October's billing. So that'll comply with that. And then the annual trustee training is coming up in November, the UASD conference, and the employee performance evaluations. We are working on those, and we're having them to the board to review in November. Is that right, Andrew?
So when's the November?
The board,
The 15th?
it's, what day is it, the
The
15th?
UASD?
Yeah, the 15th, right?
Is it the 15th of
You
November?
guys ask me that every
It's
time.
usually
The
sooner
first
than
week.
that, yeah.
Let me
Yeah,
see if I
don't-
can find
I
it.
have it on my
It's
calendar. I
the-
think it's then.
That month is
It's November,
well.
Let me tell you.
the
just a
12th?
second.
Is it a Wednesday?
There's two things. The UASD meeting's usually the first week, and then the board meeting will be the,
second.
The second, yeah.
We're talking about the training.
Yeah, the training.
So,
It's
the
like
training.
6th or 7th.
Yeah, it's the 6th through the 7th.
Okay.
So the 6th is Sunday, so it'll be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday,
No, of November?
right?
Monday's the
Oh, no,
one.
no, I'm sorry,
November is
sorry,
a
that's
Wednesday.
what.
You'll be, you guys are attending the 6th.
Wednesday, Thursday,
Right,
Friday.
6th at 1 o'clock, right?
I'll verify the time.
Yeah, I
on
thought
that
it was
for you.
1 o'clock.
It's usually an afternoon,
Right.
so. But yeah, if you all could make it, that would be great. If by chance you can't make it, there are some online courses, I think
No,
all of you know.
I'd rather go in person.
Okay,
I've got 11 a.m., is that right? On the 6th?
No, it's gonna be 1
we'll have to
o'clock.
verify that
It's
for
after-
you.
it's
I'll
always
verify
after-
the time.
It's always after
usually
lunch.
after lunch.
Right.
But that concludes my legal compliance report, unless anybody has any questions.
Jeff, do you have anything?
No, no.
Danny?
No.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's move over on to our HR report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Couple things to report is we had the Unified Fire come out and do a training on fire extinguishers. And then after in-class training, they were able to come out and actually put out fires with the extinguishers. I think we heard back from the employees that it was positive and that they all enjoyed it. Plus, it also offers us some protection in knowing that our employees are trained in how to use a fire extinguisher. Raymond was able to pull the trigger on one and shoot a little bit extra compared to everybody else. Give some people a laugh, so I think it was a good time for everybody. I also attended the Society of Human Resource Management conference. Couple of the takeaways that I was able to, that I thought was most valuable to bring back was some of the changing things on mental health and some things that we can do as a district to help our employees with mental health. The other thing that really stood out to me was training that we had on First Amendment audits, the not if, but when you have a First Amendment audit, how to prepare for that. And we're gonna start training our employees on what our expectations are, as well as setting up a protocol on how we're gonna handle it, and a few other things. And then last thing that I'll touch on is this month's safety focus is hand safety. We're going over that in safety meetings and making sure that everybody's trained up on compliance on our safety program.
I've noticed in our workforce, guys are a little bit lax on wearing gloves. And they don't realize that if they get especially in our line of work, you start getting a neck or that is a place for entrance of bacteria and stuff. So-
Infections come from
But
something like that.
sometimes they don't think they need gloves or anything, and they need to think a little bit.
Yep, and sometimes
So maybe
I-
we need to remind them a little bit.
Yeah, we do. We've been talking about it this month and we'll continue to talk about it. Some of the things that have come up too, as well as that bacteria getting in there is, no gloves, a smashed finger can go to a laceration or whatever it might be. So we'll be working on that. That's it for me, unless you have.
Hey, so I want to go back really quick. I want to go back to public comment. I noticed Jack's here. Jack, you came in a little late. Do you want to address the board on anything? You just came, okay, I just want to make sure, because I want to give you a chance if you need to. Okay.
Thank you, Jack.
Okay, let's move on to item H, project award and agreements. Clint, let's have you take off on number 1.
All right, thanks, Mr. Chairman. So we've had a couple discussions on Yapify. I think the opinion from the staff and from the board, based on the presentations, is that we felt like it was a positive. We wanted to check some references, and Trevor's done that. Really positive recommendations from the references. They use it all the time. They do have a dedicated person, a communications manager type person, but
Yeah.
I think we'll take a little bit different approach. I think we'll train all the managers and then potentially one of the front office staff members to be able to get it ready, and then it will go through an approval process prior to being sent out.
Okay, Clint, really quick, since we've got some community residents here, how about just giving them a brief? You don't have to get into big detail, just kind of let them know what this system is that we're gonna start doing.
All right, yeah, this Yapify program is a tool, it's a software program that basically captures all of the customer's information and then makes it easy to use that information to get messaging to them. So right now we have a program where we have everybody's email and we can send out alerts, but we can't say, hey, in your neighborhood, Jack, there's a leak. And we want to let you know and your neighbors know that there's a leak and there's going to be a shutdown. But we don't want to let everybody in the district know, because they don't need to know that, right? It's not affecting them. This program will let us draw a circle and identify the homes that will be affected, and then just send out information, whether it's email, text, phone call, little postcard, whatever works for the communication method. They've set up this program to make it really easy to do that. And so I think that's a positive.
Yes, I agree.
If we can increase the more information that's usable and relevant to the customer, because information is good and bad. If you're getting a bunch of information that doesn't really apply to you, what do you tend to do? You ignore it, right? You just start, if you get the flyers every month and you don't find anything useful, you just start throwing them in the trash. You don't even open it. We want to make sure that the information we give is important, it's useful, and it's relevant. And this program, I think, is a great solution to do that. So the cost is $10,485 for 1 year's subscription. We think that that would be well worth the investment for the payoff.
Is that what it's gonna be every year, or will it just change a
And then we can
little
add more stuff to it if we
This
want.
is pretty much the
Baseline.
basic.
bit? Okay,
We didn't want to start off with anything real fancy until we got a good
And this
feel.
might be a good thing for the city to do, you know what I mean?
yeah. You
I
understand?
mean, I think we'll also attempt utilizing this for our shut-offs and
Delinquency
notifications.
notices, yeah.
Boy, that'd be great.
So when people are they're delinquent, this, you can send out,
Yeah.
so then that way it'll save us time, so we're not going down and putting the door hangers and,
The feedback we got is that it's been really successful for
Wow,
that.
great.
okay.
People like having more ways to be notified rather than the pink notice or the red notice. So we'll be able to communicate in more ways with the customers.
And each customer is a little bit different. I mean, Nathan wants a paper, I want a text, you want an email, and it will decipher those three things. We don't have to just send out text. We don't have to
Okay.
just send out. It's per customer.
And they're,
Has this been approved?
we're asking for approval.
We're asking for
Okay.
approval today.
Is that okay?
Yeah. If
Do you have
Okay,
any,
Danny, with it?
are you okay with it?
Yes, I am, really
Okay.
good.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the Upfi services in the amount of $10,485.
I'll second that.
Been motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Trevor, this is yours.
All right. So as part of our, kind of ongoing well rehab and maintenance, we had pulled Haynes pump number 7, and got some work done on the pump. And in that process, we videoed the well, and it had a lot of growth. A lot of the screen was blocked off. We had it brushed and belled, and a lot of that material remained. And we had our consultant CRS, who is now Horrocks, They've merged. They reviewed that well video, and it actually is very similar to Haynes 2. And if you remember, we did a rehab project there where we chemically cleaned that, and that was pretty effective. So we're looking at doing a similar process with number 7, where it will remove that from the screen and it'll work back into the aquifer and clean that up so that 7 will now produce, back to where it was when it was originally drilled. It's that intent, so. This is for the, putting the project together and construction management through that.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve Horrocks task order for Haynes Well number 7, rehabilitation in the amount of $29,750.
I'll second that.
It's been motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, Leal, we're gonna move on to administration. Yep.
Great. So, management and staff have brought to you this tentative 2025 budget. And, if you wanna go to it, we can just begin, maybe I can highlight some things through it. So on page 1,
Okay,
not the picture, but right behind the picture. This page is basically a sources outline and a money uses outline of all the numbers behind it. So with this budget, we're estimating a net income in 2025 to be 9 million. Then we're also expecting to receive 1.3 million in grant money, and that was the application that we did for our Haynes number 8 project that we're doing now. And then currently, today, in our impact fee reserves, we have 9.6 million.
in our
That's available for projects that are in our capital facilities plan. Then we've approved purchase of a couple pieces of property that we have not paid for yet, and they're in this year's budget right at this point, and so it was approved to spend reserves on that of 12 million.
So the land that we are buying and the land that we're selling off, that'll recapture what we,
Yeah, and if the
And-
property that we sell and get the money from.
right.
It is in these figures.
Okay,
It's in
awesome.
this 9 million. It becomes confusing. That's why I showed 12 million coming
Okay.
to
okay.
pay for it.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, so all these are sources, all these are gonna be money that we can use to spend
Okay,
on the budget. And then, because we have to submit a balanced budget to the state, what balances the sources is the district getting a bond or a revenue loan of about $25 million. And we can make some notes on that. Let me just finish here. So those sources will pay for these uses, and the uses I have are carryover projects as of today that we've obligated ourselves and committed of 13 million, and then it will also cover 44.3 million of new projects in 2025.
okay.
So with that said, the $25 million bond amount, just to back it up, in our master plan that we did a few years ago, it did indicate that if you stayed on schedule with these projects that we've outlined, you are going to need some money to do these. And in 2021, 23, and 24, there was a total of 32 million that they anticipated we bond or get money for.
Right.
Granted, some of these projects are pushed back, or we haven't done them, but for the amount of projects that we have committed today and what we project for next year, there's gonna be a time really soon that we need to bond or loan. Or our reserves will be completely
We
depleted.
have to go back to San Francisco for that?
If we choose to do a general obligation bond.
Okay.
the bond ratings are for general obligation bonds, and so, yeah, we would have to present to, S&P.
The options are, I think the good news is that we've been able to hold off. We've been able to get by without bonding,
Yes.
for the 3 years that we thought we needed to. We've been able to, we got some grant money, from the reuse project.
That was 4.9 million, wasn't it, for the reuse?
Roughly.
Okay.
4.85.
We've got some grant money for the Hayneswell 8, and then for the secondary project, so that's helped.
Yes.
I think Leisle is always good about making sure throughout the year that we're not exceeding our budget, and most often we come in under budget.
Right.
We've seen decreased, if you remember, for 2 of those 3 years, we saw a net decrease in operating expenses from year to year, which even though we were hiring, which I think we can only say is from efficiency. We gained it in the more efficient operations and less overtime, less outsourced work. We've done a lot more in-house, which has reduced
awesome.
consulting expenses. So I think it's a testament to Leisle and the team that we've been able to survive. But I think the message to the board is, if we're gonna continue to keep up with the replacement of our existing aging infrastructure and prepare ourselves for the growth, we're gonna have to make some hard decisions either this year or, at the worst case, I think next year, with either bonding or loan, and a combination of property tax. We're gonna have to look at that. We pushed that off as long as we felt like we could.
I think 2018, 19.
You know-
2018 or 19 was our last, so that's.
You know,
it's
as
been
a
long time.
homeowner and everything, I'm just tired of being taxed to death.
I
Yeah.
understand.
I mean, it's getting to be where, I mean, it's out of control.
And that's a fair, and we can make that decision. If we choose to not raise property taxes and we make that decision, obviously we can do that. But there's a downside to it. That means rates usually have to come up.
Increase, yeah.
Fees have to come up, because there's that balance of funds that we try to find the sweet spot where we make sure we capture the right amount of property taxes. We try to capture the fair amount of rates. That is one thing that we want to look at, is a more fair distribution of, a potentially more fair distribution of rates. Could be lowering our, like removing that base amount that people pay for, and they just pay for a true base with no gallons usage included. You know, these are all things that we can talk through and probably have a better recommendation for the board when we're through the master planning process,
What's our time frame, Clint?
which should be like mid-year next year.
Yep.
Okay.
But I just think that the message I think we're saying is there's some hard decisions coming. So as you think about that and you decide what direction the board prefers, we'll be coming back with options, obviously. But
Yeah, you've warned us about that a couple times,
Yeah.
that it's
So
gonna come
like,
down to that
like he just said, what's the time frame?
middle next year.
Middle of next
I
year?
think the soonest we could probably provide real informed decisions with all the master planning is spring.
Yeah.
They'll probably have been through enough of it that we could start getting some information that
Okay.
And I mentioned this to Clint, in an email last week, but the state of Utah, the legislature asked for a study on public water system funding options, including property tax and tiered rates. That study is supposed to be released this week. We got a preview of it at the Water Task Force meeting last week. Sounds like it'll be a really good study, but I wouldn't be surprised if the legislature makes some tweaks to the current statutory requirements regarding water rates and how property taxes are used that
Would affect us too, so maybe we
yeah.
wanna,
Yeah, well,
find
it would
out.
coincide with what you're saying, because those, if we see something this session in 2025, they'd likely go into effect in May or July anyway. I think it's a good report, because the initial bill was focused on taking away the ability of districts to impose property taxes. And that was pushed by some arguments that proved to be false, one of which is that Utah is the only state where water districts use property taxes, which the study apparently refutes pretty resoundingly. And then the other one was that, we needed to do more with the tiered rate structure to incentivize conservation. We're already required to have a tiered rate structure. So the report that we received at the task force meeting was that, the report, I think, is going to recommend, hey, water suppliers need to have property taxes. There may be some tweaks that we need to do to the rate structure and how those are set up. And so I don't know what the legislature may do with that, but I think there's a fair chance that we may see have to implement some legislative changes in the next couple of years anyway.
Will we see that though before June, July next year?
I don't know. If they pass something this next year, they could make it effective in a year, they could make it effective May 1st, they could make it effective July 1st. At this point, I don't know what the legislature may do. All I know is that we're gonna have a report that's gonna come out by the end of this week, supposedly, and then based on that report, the legislature may do something. I don't know what they may do at this point.
It would be terrible to have them undermine anything that we try to
yeah, what we wanna be.
set up for.
Right.
But I think we'll know. I mean, by the time you complete your planning process, I expect that we'll know, what sort of changes they have. And some of these may actually be positive, frankly. It sounds like I was worried that the report was gonna come out and say, no, we should do away with property taxing ability, which I think, to move to a purely fee-based system, which I think would be very hard for most water districts.
And cost more, cause
Yeah.
the reason we go for the GO bond is it's usually the best value, right?
It's secured.
It's secured because of the property taxes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and I asked that question at the task force. I said, if we were to go to a pure fee-based system, what would that mean? And they said, well, poorer people would pay more money. It would basically, the people who are richer would pay less and the poorer would pay more. Is what would happen if you move purely to a fee-based system. And so the good news is that doesn't seem to be the recommendation in this report that we made.
Good.
Okay.
So, just to continue, there's just a couple of visuals that explains the first page with the pie charts. The first one is just, again, our sources, the sources that we think we will have for 2025. And obviously, the majority of it is showing in the bonding and loan. There is a page with this information on it. I won't make you jump to it, but in the budget, we are actually decreasing our estimated income by 15%. That sounds like a lot, but it's mainly in our impact fees because, we do have growth coming. We'll still have growth coming, but when D.R. Horton brought in Little Valley and Ivory Homes brought in Gabler's Grove, they brought in a lot of income impact fees for us. So the 15% decrease is mainly in the impact fees. So the next pie chart is the, sorry, I skipped a page. The page 3, again, is just a summary broken out a little more that comes up with those totals expressed on the first page. The next pie chart is page 4, which is the budgeted uses of those sources. It shows each category basically of the expenses that we have, and we are only increasing our total expenses by 4%. 4% of our budget is $813,000. Relative to our total budget, that's fairly small. So the operating budget isn't changing that much from last year to this year. Our debt service has to do with our property taxes collected, and those payments I told management this morning that we're dropping down to a 300 next year, but it's actually the year after that. So we've been paying 600 on 2013 bond, and in 2026, it'll go down to 300, and then it's paid off in 2029. So that kind of helps us maybe think about a tax increase, but that won't be paid off till 2029.
That ain't that far away.
No, it's not. The other bonds expire 2039 and 2037, so. And those payments on those bonds increase by like 25,000 each year. In the salaries, we're not increasing very much. We have held a place in the salaries for a possibility of a pre-treatment position down at the wastewater treatment plant. Currently, we're not expecting that, but we have put that in there just in case something comes up.
Or a driver.
Or a driver, yeah,
Yeah, because
sorry.
we don't know yet about that, do we, about what they're gonna do with the,
If they
The
don't
sludge.
move, we don't anticipate any need for it,
For the driver
for a
specifically.
driver, next year.
so if they move, do we have any idea where they would go dump the waste?
There's a couple options. When the state came out and we did my biosolids inspection, he was speculating, but he doesn't have any answers, not even at the state level. I can't get anything out of ET. Luckily, we're not the only entity that relies on ET. Some of the Park City entities do, other entities do, so there's not a lot of information as far as alternative dump sites, but it's something that's top of mind for us, so we're trying to be as plugged in as possible so that we can anticipate staffing or equipment needs or anything like that.
So if they were going to move it, I mean, would we have, I mean, like you say, they don't know, but I mean, where would you, I mean, because like you said, it just depends on where it would be, right? I mean,
Skull Valley,
Further away from people, yep.
is that where,
Skull Valley was an option.
There has been speculation that they found a site north of I-80, near the prison, which I think is best case for us. But nothing solid yet.
I don't think they'll let them move it there,
Not sure.
because closer to the prison, they don't want the smell.
Well, and we used to haul it out to Ensign Ranches all the time,
Lake effect.
where's that at?
out in Skull Valley, like you said.
I heard it was Skull Valley.
It was Skull Valley, but Ensign Ranches is owned
So
it.
at Skull Valley, if it did go out there, would we have to require a full, I mean,
That's kind of what we're anticipating is a budget placeholder for a full-time driver. And whether that's one guy that specifically hauls, or it's just one additional treatment operator, and then we continue to rotate through driving responsibilities. But if it's a 2 or 3 hour round trip, we've just got to be flexible on how we plan for that.
so do we drive every day over here?
We haul 3 days a week.
3 days a week, okay.
See, we used to haul it to Skull Valley, out there to that Ensign Ranches,
Okay.
and that's a long ways out there.
It's about an hour drive.
But then the odor got bad out
One
there,
way.
and then they complained out there,
Yeah,
so.
I don't know. I was hoping there would be something, but then again, Rowley is just as bad. That's a long ways out there.
So a question on, when we're putting this budget together, what would a contractor look like for driving to do that?
That's one of the other things that we're
I mean, we
trying
gotta
to
look, cause
investigate.
cause that was something we really wanna look at too, because of the costs and, the pension,
Absolutely.
Part of that,
benefits.
what we found as we've investigated what it would cost for somebody to come in, then it's where do they store their equipment? Are they using our equipment to load? Things like that, so there's a lot of questions about it. But
So
we
the
are,
ideal situation is if they provided the vehicles and we loaded it, and then they would just pick it up and go.
right, so that's part of the evaluation is what's the cost if we hire it out versus what's the cost of a new operator? What are potential equipment costs that we need to evaluate? Things like that.
Yeah, there's enough nitrogen left in it. It is still classified as still a special material.
Okay.
All right.
So still on that same pie chart, sorry. Most of it obviously is our depreciation and amortization. That's obviously a non-cash item, so what happens with that expense is it comes around to be spent on any capital projects that we have for that year. So basically, we take that money and put it right back into our system.
Okay.
That's what happens to that. Any other questions on that?
I think you put this together real well.
Thank you.
Looks good.
It's fun.
Right down to the,
Penny, we're in
Penny,
balance.
yes.
It's in balance.
you wanna know something? Here it is, Jeff.
And getting to that, I mean, the rest of the pages are, it basically says the same thing, but it keeps getting smaller and smaller, broken out further and further, so.
Thank you. So the
I
next
don't know
one,
if you, sorry to interrupt, I don't know if you wanna go through projects
So there's,
or
it's up to the
anything.
board, all of the projects that we've, or purchases that are, equipment purchases are itemized.
right,
If there's any questions, if anybody wants to highlight anything, we can do that here.
I looked at them and I thought I was okay with it.
It's pretty clear.
It is.
If,
And this is what we're talking about. We like when it's all laid out, so we know
Right.
exactly what we're looking at.
The one thing I wondered though is as time goes on, if this changes, the worst is if something we didn't know we needed, but could some of these be pushed out? That was the big.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
You guys
definitely.
know that this
Yes.
is
yeah,
anticipated.
yeah, that's exactly right. We talk quite extensively. The idea is, hey, this is the wish list, but we always have to be in reality of what's available, and some of them can be pushed and some can't.
Yeah,
So
I
they've
like
identified the ones which are, hey, this one's gonna have to wait. If we don't have bonding in place, or, you know, cause our understanding from the board is we want to maintain healthy reserves so that we can cover
Right.
ourselves in an emergency. And so Leisle's done a great job at, pounding that drum.
That's why I wanna make sure we put that money back, we're gonna,
Right, and so everybody on the operations side that wants to spend the money knows that we have to have those revenue streams available, so I think that's where we've done some of that pushing.
right.
But you called it a wish list. It would be helpful, not necessary, but it would be helpful if you had some green marks or here, something, knowing that if push came to shove.
Right.
We could push them
We
out.
we
Don't you
talked
think?
about
Yes.
doing that.
Okay.
Or
We
a
can have
star.
that. We can have that for the final budget.
Well, we could actually have it for an internal kind of document. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, right?
But we can provide that to the board.
Just a little star for it, but like I said, you guys kind of know what you've got, but it would be nice to know what is absolutely in concrete that we have to do.
I agree.
Don't you think?
I agree on that.
If we did not do any of these next year, we would have 13 million going out already, because that's what we've committed to. But Trevor keeps busy, so he keeps.
Well, I think you guys do really good listing everything.
great job.
Just, we don't know what you have
Sure.
that is mandatory, that you know we need, and those things that maybe could slip by. I wouldn't want to make that decision, but it's nice to know that that's what you guys are thinking, and these are the projects that,
Yeah.
or this is the money that could push off if you had to.
Yeah, we can find a way to present that in a simple.
Okay, cool.
So they have to make
There's a resolution.
Resolution in the back that we have to adopt.
Yeah, and that resolution, it adopts the tentative budget, but it also sets the public hearing, which will be November 14th at 10 a.m.
Yep. Yeah, so I think, to make it easier for you, I think if we do from now therefore be it resolved, I think that that takes care of all the legal requirements that we need to do to set the tentative and to name the budget hearing.
Okay?
Yeah, I think for the motion, you could just say, I move to approve resolution number 2024-04 as presented.
Okay,
Oh, really?
Yep.
Just
Yeah.
do that? Okay.
Simple.
nice.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to propose that we adopt resolution 2024-04.
I'll second. I'll second that.
Been motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
And this is set up for November 14th, right?
At 10 o'clock. Okay, Clint?
All right, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to have a discussion with the board. Mick's probably heard quite a bit of this on the fluoride issue. Wanted to make sure everybody else was aware. If you're hearing about fluoride in the news, there was a judge in California that was responding to a lawsuit that was filed against the EPA, basically saying that the fluoride is hazardous to health, public health, at certain levels. The judge found, I think it was 1.5 milligrams per liter. There's strong evidence that it causes a reduction in IQ of children.
Jeez.
And he felt like there's no regulation at the EPA level right now, but there's a optimal target of 0.7 milligrams per liter. He feels like that's still too close to the standard, so the EPA needs to look at it as through the Toxic Substances Act program. So he's basically said the EPA needs to take action. Well, I think in Utah, not everybody has fluoride, but the counties that do, that voted it into place, are mandated by the voters to add fluoride into the water, and that's what we are mandated by. So there was some talk about some water providers got out ahead and said they were gonna put a temporary pause. It was on the news, and then they were threatened with lawsuits and potential criminal liability because, hey, that's voter mandated. You need to put that in. And I think our position, just wanted to get the board's input, we don't really like having to add fluoride, but we don't want to put anybody at criminal risk for not following a voter-approved mandate.
How about the levels we use, Clint?
Exactly, and we're at a low 0.7 is our target. It is well below that 1.5. And so my recommendation is we would wait for direction from the regulatory agencies before we took any action.
Could we put it on the ballot?
Yeah, that's an option for
Because when it was voted in was what year that they voted?
2003, I think.
Oh, is that when it was an initiative?
Yeah, because
It was probably put in earlier, but we had to be ready for it by 2000.
right, and I've had people call and say, take it out, and it's like, hey, we can't take it out, it was
Yeah.
voted in, but
Yeah.
I think our city manager, David, have we had any calls on that about the fluoride? Okay, okay, okay.
Just from a procedural standpoint, this is a federal district court, federal trial court for the Northern District of California, so they don't have any jurisdiction over Utah at this
Right.
point. I expect that this case will likely be appealed to, it'll go to the 9th District Court of Appeals, which also doesn't have jurisdiction over
Right.
the state of Utah, and we're under the 10th Circuit, and then it could eventually make it up to the Supreme Court, but that'll be years, and who knows what Congress will do with this in the interim in terms of revising rules. So at this point in time, I think this decision is prompting a discussion, but it's not changing any of our legal requirements, or it doesn't impact us directly at this point. It could lead to a Supreme Court decision that could, or it could lead to litigation here potentially, or possibly federal or state legislation, but as of right now, I don't think it requires us to do anything.
I just said, since 2003, we've had a lot of change in residents, and how do they feel about it? Is this something that needs to be voted on?
Yeah.
Because then we're following the will of the people.
I think ultimately that's the only way it gets.
So Nathan, how would you do that? How could you like, put that on the ballot, like, you know, to,
Well, I mean, it would go through a citizen referendum process.
okay,
If the citizens wanted to change it. I guess we're in a little bit of some ambiguity with Amendment D. That was the amendment that would basically allow the legislature to ignore referenda. But I think that was specific to referenda that pertain to governance structures, not necessarily this type of thing. So I think the legislature could potentially act on this. EPA could act on it. If they do, for instance, if EPA does change its federal regulations, that would necessarily require us, to everybody in the country, to do things. So, but my suggestion is before we do anything at the state level, let's just see what happens with the case. I mean,
Right.
It could get appealed to the Ninth Circuit and it could be overturned.
Well, I worry about one thing, it'd be nice to get the input from the people.
Right.
On the other hand, we only get 3,000 voters out of 9,600 users, so that's the other bad thing.
Yeah, and it's countywide, so I don't know if they would allow for more local, if they would allow that original body that voted in to be split up. I don't know how that would look.
Yeah, I say let's just, I would hate to spend a lot of time on some sort of a political process and just have, because sometimes EPA has been accused of, and I'm not saying this is the case in this particular litigation, but they've been accused of something called sue and settle, where someone will sue them about a rule, and then rather than fighting it, they'll just settle with it and come up with some nationwide rule that everyone dislikes. I'm not saying that's the case here, but because usually that happens, they get sued, and then rather than the court, they change the rule. So I think a large part is what's EPA going to do? Is this case going to, remain in place? It could be overturned by the Ninth Circuit. It could get overturned by the Supreme Court. The point is this is the start of a lengthy legal process.
So Jason, yesterday when we were out to the meeting at Jordan Valley, who was the lady? Can you remember who the lady got up in public comment? And
She was with a group, a national group, I believe,
Water Watch? I think they're the
They're
ones
the
that
plaintiffs
sued.
in this case.
ones that were in the lawsuit, yes.
yeah, she got up and spoke.
Yeah, it's Food and Water Watch. That's the plaintiff in this case. Is that who it was?
It's complex, just, you went from Jordan Valley, for instance, literally, Utah County does not fluoridate, Salt Lake County and Davis are the only two in Utah that do fluoridate. Jordan Valley, as an example, we have a fluoride station right at the county line, where as that water comes over from central Utah, it gets squirted with fluoride in the county. And so, just logistically, from an infrastructure standpoint, to try to break that out into smaller pieces would be a tough thing to do. Once the fluoride's in, you don't get it out.
And I think what's happened is, the reason the water agencies are so anxious is it's pretty nasty to deal with. You
Yeah,
know, from a handling standpoint. So there's probably a lot of incentive to jump out and want to pause it, because it's a pain in the butt and it's a dangerous chemical to deal with when it's concentrated. So there's a lot of talk about pauses on fluoride, but my recommendation is we hold off on doing any action until we get it becomes a little clearer where it's headed. I don't know if the board supports that.
No, I totally fine with that.
That's great.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on. For our next board meeting is going to be November 14th in this building at 10 o'clock. And we do have,
And the budget will be on there, right?
and the budget will be on there.
Usually we have the budget hearing at 10 and then
The meeting will take place after.
immediately following. Is that okay?
Nope, that's totally fine.
Okay.
And we do have a close today.
Yeah, okay.
So if someone would like to make a motion to close the open, no, yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to take a brief recess and immediately following meet and close meeting to discuss the character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual, the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property, including any form of water right or water shares, pending or reasonable intimate litigation and collective bargaining purposes pursuant to Utah Code 52-4-204 through 205.
I'll second that.
A motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The time is 11:32.
Okay, it's 1:53. I make a motion to close the closed meeting and reopen the public board meeting.
I second it.
All in
Motion
favor?
and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Consider action, agenda, da-da-da. Okay,
yeah.
you can do the last one, yeah.
And I make a motion to adjourn.
I second it. Motion second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.